The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello, welcome to Wonderfully Made. I am Dr. Zeno Charles Marcel. I'm a physician and the medical director at the Lifestyle Center of America in Oklahoma. I have in front of me an ad that was cut out of one of the newspapers some time ago. Here's what the ad said. $25,000 reward. If you see this person, they had a picture of him, in any restaurant or eating establishment, please call Dr. Weaver or Dr. Zito at, and they gave a telephone number. Why did they have this ad? The reason is that this man was trying to lose weight. And these doctors had had a contract with him, and he was willing to put up $25,000 as a wanted ad. If you see him doing it, they would pay you. Desperate, you think? Well, some people are desperate in trying to lose weight, and they will go to any lengths to be able to secure the weight loss that they're trying to achieve. It seems as though many of us are constantly fighting a gaining battle. In Western countries like the United States, it's normal, it seems, it's popular for people to just gain a few pounds every year. Most people are doing it. Maybe you are. But yet, this battle that we're fighting, this gaining battle, most of us seem to be losing. Now, I'm not going to pretend over the next half an hour to tell you exactly what you need to do to lose weight. But what I will do is explore some of the things that are available today and explore some of the issues behind this weight problem, this heavy problem, so to speak, that we have. Do you remember Mr. Walter Hudson? Well, just to refresh your memory, he was that nice guy who weighed over 1,400 pounds. I believe he weighed up to 1,450 pounds. He held a world record for the amount of weight that a man could carry. He also held a second record, and the record was for the amount of weight that he lost. He was consulted by a very famous doctor, Dick Gregory, and Dr. Gregory, so to speak, put him on a special kind of diet and followed him. The diet was called the Bahamian diet. Be that as it may, he lost over 1,200 pounds. He came down to 200 pounds. What else happened? Well, within a matter of months to over a year, he gained all of the weight back. Yes, he got back up to over 1,400 pounds. And then, unfortunately, he suffered a heart attack and died. Nice man. As a matter of fact, he left a legacy. He left some things in his diary that tells us a little bit more about the man on the inside that we may not have seen on television or read for some of the interviews that he may have had. Here's one entry. He said, "I put a brave smile on my face and continued. But when everyone else was gone, in the privacy of my own room, I agonized." Some of you who are hearing my voice and seeing my face on television may actually be in a similar kind of situation as Mr. Hudson. I know that this is a common problem because left to my own resources, I too would be much bigger than you see me here. Nonetheless, there is hope. You see, I worked also with another person I had the privilege of getting to know her some years ago in the fair state of Pennsylvania. This lady, too, held a record. She had the Guinness Book of World Records record for being the heaviest woman. She was 1,200 plus pounds. She also held a second Guinness Book of World Records record. She had lost the most weight of anybody. At the time that I saw her, she had been losing about 900 pounds. Unfortunately, she had some complications of the weight loss that she had achieved. And this caused her to be unable to move around the way she had intended and the way she would have liked to. I lost touch with her some years ago, so I can't tell you the rest of the story. But this woman tried just about everything that she could. And ultimately, she came down to one solution that worked for her. She recognized that she had a voracious appetite and a propensity to slothfulness. And so she gave it all over to God. And she got success. Now you might say, but doctor, I have given things over to God. I cannot judge you, nor would I ask you to judge anybody else. The issue is that this worked for her the same way some other people have other remedies that work for them. Remember a very famous talk show host? Well, this lady, she went on a special diet and lost a great amount of weight, and it was the splash over all the news and television and newspapers because this person who had been fighting the gaining battle finally appeared as if she would win. I'll tell you more about her later. Mr. Hudson and this patient that I was telling you about fell into the category of excessively obese individuals. Today we use the body mass index as the way of being able to tell where someone is on the scale of being overweight. What we do is we can calculate the body mass index or look on a chart to determine what it is. It uses the person's weight as well as their height. Now, you can calculate your own body mass index by taking your weight in pounds, multiplying it by 705, and then dividing by your height in inches. And when you get a result, you divide that result by your height in inches once again. That will give you your body mass index. For a body mass index up to 27, there are certain approaches that we use. Between 27 and 30, there are other medical approaches. Between 30 and 40, there are other approaches. And over 40, the excessive body weight category, or excessive obesity category, we do some other things. Now, while on the one hand, we look at people who are excessively weighty, in society, we have other models of what we should be like, so-called what we should be like. When we look at the supermodels who are often super thin, or we look at the Miss America pageant and see what is supposed to be considered, the beautiful physique, we see that really people in the United States prefer slim. Yet, so many of us are not slim. It probably produces in us some kind of schizophrenic reaction, because we're seeing what we so-called ought to be, and we have to face the reality of what we are. Now, our idea about weight and our use of weight as an index for things actually starts when a baby is born. One of the first things that someone will ask, a well-wishing person, ask of the mother or the father of the baby, they would ask, you guessed it, how much did the baby weigh? You see, we use the weight of the baby to tell us something about how healthy that baby is. If the baby is 2 or 3 pounds, we'll assume that the baby is sick. Something must be wrong. On the other hand, if we had a baby that was, 9, 12, or 15 pounds, we'd say, ooh, something is wrong, and we think, oh, what the mother must have gone through. The idea is, though, that we use weight as a way of being able to gauge whether the baby is healthy or not healthy. Then we look at how children are brought up and whether they are eating eating abundantly or not eating much at all. We encourage our children to eat, and sometimes we may even encourage them to overeat. Sometimes when children are adequately satisfied, and if you were to put anything else in front of them, they'd either play with it, toss it, put it on their heads, or do something like that, or if you try to put it in their mouth, they'd blur and spit it out. What we do instead is we have these games of trying to help the child to eat more. So what do? The aeroplane game. Well, we have all these different things that try to encourage the children to eat, and sometimes we are actually inadvertently encouraging them to overeat. All the while, the #1 selling toy of all times in the United States is actually the Barbie doll. Yes, the Barbie doll. Barbie is supposed to be an adult. But if you were to take the dimensions of Barbie and put her into the adult-size, full-grown body, Dr. Glenn Blix at Loma Linda University did a calculation, or got a calculation, of what her physique would actually be like. He estimated that her dimensions would be 31, 19, 20, or 21. Think about that. 31, 19, 20. If someone were to be that size, in reality, that person would be considered sick and emaciated. Yet this is held up as a standard for what we ought to be. Such a person with that size, we would consider having an eating disorder. The body fat percentage of that person would be less than 10%, which means that all of the reproductive functions would be diminished in such a person with a physique like that. This is the tension that we have. Desiring this skinny, emaciated look, while at the same time looking in the mirror and feeling badly about ourselves. Now, I would like to mention that we cannot judge somebody's character, or really anything about them, by the size that they are. You see, we don't know what's cooking in their pot, figuratively or literally. There are some people who have more weight because of genetic situations. Mind you, even though that is not the usual thing, you can't tell that it's not somebody's issue. Some people, because of medical conditions or because of medications or treatments that they're receiving, would carry more weight, and you don't have that history. I remember a time when I was invited to speak somewhere, and the person who invited me was rather portly. This person was a big advocate for health, and I thought, well, what kind of example is this if that person happens to carry so much weight? It wasn't until I heard the person speak and tell of how God has been blessing them in their weight loss, and the fact that they were over 100 pounds heavier sometime in the past, it shamed me to think that I was attempting to judge this person's ability to represent health, when in fact I just didn't know the whole story. I would recommend to you, even if you've been successful in losing weight, don't assume that somebody else needs to do it just the way that you did in order to lose their weight. And if by chance they don't lose weight, that they're somehow inferior, or God isn't blessing them or something like that, because we don't know all of the issues involved. And weight loss and weight gain is actually a very complex issue. The average man in the United States has about 16% body fat. I talk about body fat because obesity really is trying to estimate what the body fat is. It's the body fat that actually causes most of the risk associated with increased weight. You see, if someone were just muscular, or they had the proverbial large bones, and this was the cause of their increased weight, it may not be a problem at all. But it's the excess fat that is the problem. In this country, women on average have about 22% body fat. If in a man that body fat percentage were to rise to 22%, or in a woman it rises to 32%, then it means that they have fat that's developing around the internal organs, fat that we may not be able to see from the outside, but which are beginning, which is beginning to cause that person to have risk for various diseases. We know that if someone were to get to a body mass index of 27, that 72% of such people will already have another risk factor for heart disease, whether it be high blood pressure, diabetes, or abnormal lipids. The waist-hip ratio is something that we use as well. And in other programs, I've talked about the waist-hip ratio for men and women. The healthiest one for a man is 0.8 or less. For a woman, it would be 0.7 or less. However, we use numbers that are a little bit more, ample, more like what people are likely to do. For men being 1, that is waist and hip circumference being equal, and for women 0.8. Now, when we look at the body mass index, a body mass index of less than 27 is one that we would say, from a medical standpoint, does not represent a high enough risk that we should aggressively pursue weight loss. In other words, for somebody with a body mass index up to 27, we would recommend that the individual, yes, lose some weight back down to below 25, but they don't have to go on some extreme kind of program in order to get that weight down. For people with body mass indexes at 27, or between 27 and 30, usually for that person to go on a sensible, self-directed program makes an adequate response, and therefore it enables that person to lose the weight gradually the way it should be lost, because they gain the weight gradually. For someone with a body mass index between 30 and 40, usually this requires an intervention such as a residential lifestyle program. At the Lifestyle Center of America, we have such a program. We take people who have excessive weight. Oftentimes, they have other problems associated with their increased weight, and we see very good results. But we're not the only place. As a matter of fact, there are places all around the country where someone can go for a residential program that should be able to be successful in helping them to lose weight. For body mass indices above 40, usually we're looking at doing something more drastic. And for someone who needs to lose the weight, especially if there is a very definite risk to their life, this individual might do well to consider even a surgical intervention. Be that as it may, what we would like to do is to help people who have this battle with gaining weight to take a sensible and sensitive look at where they are and make some steps in the direction of losing the weight to become less risky for premature death and complications of the obesity. One of the things that has been used over the years is called a very low calorie diet, or VLCD. Remember I told you about this famous talk show host who lost a lot of pounds? Well, actually, she lost, over 3 months, 67 pounds. She got on television and showed her weight loss. She paraded it, and everybody thought this was fabulous. There is hope for me, I'm sure many people thought. She was on a very low-calorie diet using a powdered protein that was produced by a commercial manufacturer. An 800 number was flashed on the screen when she was demonstrating how well this product had worked for her. Over the ensuing 24 hours, there was a recorded 1 million plus telephone calls to that 800 number. Of course, only 150,000 of them could be answered. But think about it. With one airing of one show, over 1 million people saw hope in weight loss. Now, we know the rest of the story. After she lost that weight, she promptly gained the weight back. Then she had an announcement that says, I will no longer do this. And what she then had was a personal fitness trainer and a personal chef help her to develop a way to eat sensibly and to lose weight a lot more naturally. Unfortunately, she has gained some of that weight back. But you see, the problem is that there's an ongoing issue, a complex, ongoing issue that oftentimes makes it very difficult for people to lose weight. I want to ask you once more, don't judge. If only we knew what was cooking in that person's pot. These very low-calorie diets, however, do work. They cause the weight to be lost pretty rapidly, but as soon as the person starts eating again, if they eat the way they used to be eating before, and they haven't learned to eat better, then they will gain the weight back just as readily as they lost it. Now, there's a special kind of diet that is these high protein, high fats. I call them fad diets. These diets have been around for a long time. As a matter of fact, the first such diet that was popularized was actually many years ago by a gentleman by the name of William Banting. William Banting popularized this kind of diet, which wasn't his own, by the way, by writing a letter to the editor of the London Times. You see, William Banting was a coffin maker for the Duke of Wellington. And being a portly man, he developed some illnesses associated with his excessive weight. One of the issues was actually recurrent ear infections. His doctor, looking at this large man whose ear was actually almost shut closed because of his portliness, told him, "Your problem, sir, is your weight. You lose weight and the infection in your ear will clear." "Well," William Banting asked, "how would I lose weight?" At which point the doctor replied, "I want you to go home and eat only two things. Eat bacon and mutton." Well, William Banting, a compliant sort of fellow, went home and he had bacon and mutton for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and even for snacks in between. And the rest was history. Over a short space of time, he lost an enormous amount of weight. So much so that he published his account in the London Times as a letter to the editor. It's a famous letter. Of course, it's no special oratory, but I'll paraphrase the letter a little bit here for you. Here's what it said in essence. "Peoples of London, do I have news for you? If you want to lose all of your problems, give me your ear. Do nothing but eat bacon and mutton." Not necessarily good poetry, but he gave a point. Now, I'm not suggesting that you eat bacon and mutton. But what has happened is that we believe every so often, actually quite frequently, somebody gets a hold of that letter, sees what happened, and they name it their own diet. So today we have several fad diets that are going around purporting to be very original, when in fact it's nothing more than the mutton and bacon diet of William Banting. Do these diets work? The answer is yes. How do they work? Well, these are low carbohydrate diets, yes. They are high in fats and high in protein. The kinds of fat, since it's derived from animal products, is saturated fat. Now, I have talked to you before about this high saturated fat. Saturated fat is bad fat. It produces higher cholesterol responses by the liver, so that people with a high saturated fat diet develop hardening of the arteries. They may lose weight over the short haul, but they're headed for heart disease in the long haul. Then the diet also has high protein. Now, the body doesn't store protein except as muscle. So what happens? The body has to work on this protein to get rid of it through the liver initially, and then through the kidneys. That's how we lose the nitrogen in the protein. There is evidence today that high protein diets may actually interfere with the kidney function over time. This is particularly true in people who have already some illness or disease that puts their kidneys at risk for kidney failure, such as people with diabetes and people with high blood pressure. So, do you think it's safe to use a high carbohydrate, high fat diet in order to lose weight? I want to be clear. If you were to do so, you will do so with risk, and you will lose weight. But once you start eating again a more regular kind of diet, you will put the weight back very quickly. How does this work? Well, because of the amount of fat and protein and the paucity of carbohydrate in such diets, the individual actually uses the protein and the fat to be able to produce energy. The byproduct of using the protein and the fat is the production of some small molecules, these little chemicals called ketone bodies. Ketone bodies provide for individuals a fruity odor to their breath. Ketone or acetone will produce this fruity odor. But besides the odor, these ketones actually work on the brain. They suppress the appetite and they make the individual feel a little bit sick, if you will, so they don't want to eat. The result is that the individual who may have been using upwards of 2,000 calories a day as the cause of why they were having so much problems with their weight may now drop down to 12 or 1,300 calories a day, and it's the lower calories that allows them to lose the weight. You see, one of these fad diets works, or any of the fad diets, works the same way any kind of diet will work. The research has shown the easiest way to lose weight is to not eat. But obviously we can't do that for very long. People have tried to do that, and prolonged fasting actually can be dangerous. We have seen the freedom fighters in Ireland, around day 30, they start to die after not eating for 30 days. In France, some years ago, there were the nuclear activists. They decided that they would protest against nuclear energy and nuclear arms. The result? Around day 30 of their fasting, for a good cause, they would say, for political reasons, they too began dying at around 30 days. You see, we can't fool God. Rather, we should go with a system that He has set in place. Yes, low saturated fats, moderate monounsaturated fats, high fiber carbohydrates. These are parts of what makes for good diet, because we are fearfully and wonderfully made.